Okay, we are back on the record. This is the people of the state of Michigan versus Jarvis Butts, 2459617. Are the people ready for the lineup argument?
Yes, Judge, we are.
Okay, go right ahead.
Thank you. And before I get to the real issue on the homicide charge, I'm going to take care of a few preliminary matters. It is the people's intent to increase count 3, which is currently criminal sexual conduct second degree, to criminal sexual conduct first degree, person under 13, defendant 17 years of age or older. We have the defendant's birthday on the record, and that would be based on the testimony of the one minor witness that testified, as well as Cordell Wright's testimony. The minor witness testified that it happened at the old shop, and when Ms. Ripley was asking questions, she identified that as being the location. Cordell Wright testified back in November that they didn't move from that shop, which was at East Warren and Neff in the city of Detroit, until May or June. Based on NaZiyah's birthday, which is in her medical records, at that time she would have been 12 years old, and the minor witness testified clearly describing an act of penetration, specifically penis to anal opening. With respect to the criminal sexual, child sexually abusive activity, that would be based on the text messages as well as the minor's testimony as well. Combining those two things satisfies the elements of those charges. However, going to count 1 in murder in the first degree premeditated, I would like to go through and put some of the pieces together. And we are sitting here today, or standing here today in court on January 9th, 2025, which is 1 year, almost to the minute, the last time NaZiyah was seen on a camera in the city of Detroit, which is on the screen now. The last time that she was seen was on January 9th, 2024 at 2:56, getting off of the bus at 3 Mile Drive in Cornwall and walking down Bedford. She was walking towards what she didn't know at the time would be Jarvis Butts and her ultimate murder by him. We take that moment in time and then go to Cordell Wright's testimony where he testified that they picked NaZiyah up on their way back to their shop at 9000 Connor, and they proceeded with her to that location. We have Jarvis Butts' sister's testimony, Tijuana Butts, who did say that she saw a young girl with a very distinct and distinct jacket getting in and out of that car, the white Cadillac Escalade. That would have been before Jarvis, Cordell, and NaZiyah departed for Ypsilanti. We have Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony as to his cell phone locations based on cell tower information and the historical call detail records, which placed them consistent going out to Ypsilanti. And then we have Cordell's testimony getting them back to the shop. Talasha Moore also testified to seeing NaZiyah in Ypsilanti with Cordell and Jarvis. Cordell, as we know, testified that he had to get back to his house based on his tether hours by 9 p.m., and that is the last time that anyone who is not Jarvis Butts would see NaZiyah Harris alive. From the shop, we proceed out to the Park Crest Inn, where Jarvis Butts checked into a hotel at 9:30 p.m., and Sergeant O'Rourke's testimony corroborates this, placing his phone in the area of that 20,000 Harper address at around midnight till early in the next morning on the 10th. Using the data that you see on the screen in those times. Recapping January 9th, this is the last time that we have any sort of communication from NaZiyah. There was, if you look at those messages that Sergeant Jones went through and read, just between NaZiyah and Jarvis, there was consistent and constant communication up until January 9th. There's also no messages from Jarvis after NaZiyah goes missing on the 9th, looking for her, seeing where she is, trying to find her, trying to help, as anyone should do at that time, her family locate her. There's no messages to her phone, to that Text Now account from Jarvis Butts' phone. Her legal guardian and grandmother, Annette Harris, has not seen any social media posts. The OIC of the case, Sergeant Jones, has not seen anything for a total of 1 year now. The Lieutenant George Harris, who was involved in the investigation in the first month, didn't see anything that he saw from social media or Text Now after the 9th. Jarvis Butts on the 9th, we know, borrowed Latricia Johnson's car overnight, which was unusual. He borrowed that from and then again boarded on the 10th or 11th. We know that NaZiyah's glasses were found in that car sometime after the 10th or 11th when Latricia Johnson was at that shop and Jarvis Butts snatches them out of her hand. From the Park Crest Inn and from January 9th, we go out to 7 Mile and Burke. This is by far the most important location in this case because we know that the defendant spent from 11:40 p.m. on the 10th to 1:34 a.m., nearly 2 hours in that area, in that wooded area where the Rouge River runs through. And to give, this is from the slideshow of the scene photos that were taken at 7 Mile and Burke. This is the area where it's the people's theory Jarvis Butts did at least one of two things. Either killed NaZiyah at 7 Mile and Burke, but at the very least dumped her body in this location. We know this because of the evidence that was found there, specifically the black hoodie, which you see in this photo here, as well as the pink bodysuit and the shoes that we confirmed or that are hers based on the picture that the OIC received from her brother. And those items were collected. The black hoodie and pink jumpsuit were tested. And importantly, Rion Green testified as to which swabs were which. This analysis here and hypothesis and result pertains to the right shoulder swab on NaZiyah Harris's black hoodie that she took that picture in when she was in school on January 9th. The one, importantly, that Annette Harris testified was in good condition when NaZiyah left. We will get to pictures of that, but this shows that NaZiyah Harris's DNA is there as well as Jarvis. And importantly, this is one of the stain swabs that was positive not just for blood, but human blood based on the hemotrace results. In the next one, we have, this pertains to not the stain swabs, but the regular swab that Rion Green testified was a wearer ID swab. Importantly here, Jarvis Butts' DNA from that swab that would have been taken around the neck of that sweater or the end of the arms of that sweater is there with very strong support, and of course NaZiyah's DNA is there as well. And when we look at that sweater specifically through the PowerPoint photos that Rion Green took and put together, we can see that there is a lot of markings on this. If the court looks closely on this, and I did, there are 15 phenol-positive stain markings on this sweater. This is just the front of that sweater. And of course, the court paid attention and saw the markings or the damage to the hood that it is the people's theory would have been stab wounds or something to that effect that happened when Jarvis Butts murdered NaZiyah Harris. We also have to look, and it goes to the premeditation element as well as everything he did before, at Jarvis Butts' actions, specifically what he did to attempt to conceal or cover up his role in the murder of NaZiyah Harris. First, we have the glasses that he made sure he grabbed directly from Latricia Johnson's hands when shown, that are consistent with the glasses she had in the photo from the 9th when she was in school. We have the jail call to Cordell Wright to get that phone of his out of Miss Davis's car and into someone else's possession, which he testified he tried to do, but was ultimately unsuccessful. And then Sergeant Jones testified that they ultimately did recover that phone from Miss Davis's car. There's the phone call to Latricia Johnson, which was played when she was testifying, saying to get anything he touched clean, to clean anything he touched, to get anything, don't drive her car, drive his mom's car, which is important because when you combine her testimony of when Jarvis Butts took her car, those 2 times on the 9th and 10th, and then either the next day or that same day, it's important because that car is the car that he transported NaZiyah Harris out to 7 Mile and Burke to either dump her body or to murder and then dump her body there. And we can go through all of the lies that Jarvis Butts told any detective or any officer that he testified to, but in highlighting those, he denies to Detective Mays that he was with NaZiyah at all or had talked to NaZiyah at all on the 9th, denies ever picking her up, denies to, even when confronted with the January 9th messages, he said that it wasn't him initially. Obviously, we heard in the subsequent interviews specifically on June 1st with the OIC, he came off of that. He told Shannon Harris that NaZiyah texted him on the 9th. She says that he never did that. And we have some of their messages in the record as well. He denies going to a hotel and denies going to a hotel with NaZiyah Harris and denies having any sort of sexual relationship with NaZiyah, even though the text now messages completely prove that that is an absolute lie. We also have his motive. We know from Sergeant Jones that he was going to be going into custody supposedly on January 9th until roughly December, I believe, is what Sergeant Jones testified to. We know that that date was adjourned because he said in his interview that he had a legal issue. He said it was out in Clinton Township, but I submit to this court that that's not the legal issue he was talking about. He was talking about the legal issue he would have had if NaZiyah had been left alive. He had to make sure that when he was in custody that she was not going to give birth to any child of his. That's his motive in this case. That's why that's January 9th. Sentencing date was adjourned to February 7th so he could take care of that potential legal issue. He was being told consistently by NaZiyah throughout the months that she might be pregnant, and then on 11/27, she says to him that it's hard to do this gym shit with this baby. Less than a week or 2 weeks later, he's searching on Google how to abort a baby, how to not just abort a baby or get an abortion, but how to do it at home, how to get rid of that without any medical professional or any responsible mandated reporter knowing about it. We clearly have that motive. And obviously, Judge, one of the big issues in this case is proving that NaZiyah Harris is dead without having a body. On January 9th, she vanished off the face of the earth. There is absolutely no evidence after the 9th that she was alive, that she was sending messages to anyone. Her, again, legal guardian had not seen her since the 9th. No one else, officers, friends, family have seen her since the 9th. There's no social media post reviewed by any officer to this day that would indicate she was alive. There's no messages, no further messages on text now after the 9th. There is a full and complete stop of any activity that would indicate she was alive. And Judge, I submit to this court that if that were the evidence that we had at this point, that would be enough at this point for a probable cause determination to show that she is in fact deceased today. However, there is more than that. Her hoodie found at 7 Mile and Berg, which we just saw a photo of, has Jarvis Butts' DNA on it and NaZiyah Harris's DNA on it, and it is covered in blood, indicating that something traumatic happened to her. And all the other evidence shows that something traumatic happened to her at the hands of Jarvis Butts. And then we go back to his motive. Was told by NaZiyah that she was pregnant, searched all of the home abortion procedures, and was going to go into the Wayne County Jail until December, which we just passed, of 2024. Judge, I submit to this court that the evidence that you have heard over the last 4 days proves not only that NaZiyah Harris is currently deceased, but also that she was murdered by the defendant, who had plenty of motive to do so, had plenty of opportunity to do so, and he did that. And I will note that the defendant in this case, Jarvis Butts, does not get a break because he successfully hid her body. The evidence to a probable cause determination, which the question is she probably dead, and did the defendant probably do that? Both questions are answered with a yes, based on all of the evidence that you have seen. I would reserve any further argument for rebuttal. Thank you.
Attorney Quick?
Thank you, Judge.
Sorry.
I know how well aware the court.
First, Judge, I'm going to start with talking about People v. Fisher that Ms. Quick just referenced. And it is important to note that this case is distinguishable for the following reasons. One, we're talking about a different standard. This was a trial issue, a directed verdict standard, where the court is saying at trial beyond a reasonable doubt. First of all and foremost, it's distinguishable for that reason. Secondly, though, the court in Fisher said in this case there was no physical evidence such as bloodstains or a weapon linking defendant to Joyce's death. In this case, we have bloodstains. We have bloodstains on the hoodie that was found at 7 Mile and Bird, where the defendant spent 2 hours on the night of the 10th going into the 11th. That places them together in the same spot and is very strong evidence that NaZiyah Harris is in fact dead. Secondly, though, Judge, having dealt with People v. Fisher, Ms. Quick talked about the 9th and 10th, that no one saw the defendant with NaZiyah for that day going into the 10th and into the 11th. However, we heard from one of his significant others or girlfriends that he was secretive, that he didn't want anyone looking at his phone. And we certainly know that he knows how to keep different women and or girls away from each other. For example, I believe it was Shannon Harris that testified that she was familiar with an address of Outer Drive in Belfort, but she had no idea other than the fact that she would pick the defendant up there at different times. We know through other testimony that the defendant was dating someone that lived there. And with respect to Ms. Quick saying that NaZiyah never threatened him, never did anything, I'm not sure if this one text message was highlighted by the OIC in this case when she testified, but on November 27th, 2023 at 23 hours and 37 minutes UTC time, NaZiyah said to the defendant, "When I see you, I'm a fuck you, tell you regret not answering my calls," which I would submit to this court is a threat. And then just over a month later, she says she goes missing at the hands of the defendant. And Ms. Quick also talked about the driving around that Cordell and Jarvis were doing and how it was an unplanned meetup with NaZiyah on the 9th. However, that may be true from Cordell's perspective, because he wouldn't have known what Jarvis's plan was at that time. But clearly, on the 9th, send okay if you've seen the message so I can delete your number, and then the defendant's response, okay. And Jarvis was the one driving per Cordell's testimony. Now, Ms. Quick also talked about the knives and how the knives found in the defendant's car of the one that was tested came back negative, and that's true. We cannot dispute that. However, we know that that was more than a month after, giving the defendant plenty of time to clean it. But beyond that, Judge, this case is one where the defendant thought to, and successfully did, hide the body. And it's a common sense inference that if he thought to hide the body, he would also think to get rid of the murder weapon at the same time. And Judge, Ms. Quick is right. We are talking about a probable cause standard. And as I said, the question is, did the defendant with premeditation probably murder NaZiyah Harris? And I submit to this court that the answer is yes. And circumstantial evidence, as is noted in the jury instructions at trial court or in circuit court, is just as good as direct evidence. And yes, this is a circumstantial case, but when we put those circumstances together, including the physical evidence, the cell phone evidence, which I would equate with physical evidence for purposes of that, as well as the defendant's opportunity and motive, the picture becomes very clear that the defendant, Jarvis Butts, took the life of NaZiyah